Hey everybody, and welcome back to Igniskidd. We continue where we left off in the last video, so if you haven't seen that and you want to get an overview of every currently played speedroid monster, go check it out. Put a lot of time in it. This is why this video is a week late, and definitely not because I mismanaged my time and went to two locals at the weekends and then was dead the next day. So yeah, moving on. Before we start though, and this is an experiment by the way, I really like numbers. It's a primary reason I play Yu-Gi-Oh! And I know this sounds like an ad, which it isn't. This is just a reminder that as of recording, only this many people are subscribed, which is less than 5%. The number can change all the time, which is I say less than 5. If it was over, I would be impressed. It would help out a lot if you hit the giant red button like right down there before we start this little crash course to speedroids. And if you don't like the sound of subscribing because it's overused, just look at it as a giant thank you button, alright? Cue the intro. We start with the best spell that we have access to at the moment, as we recover from an entire week of working when I upload this, to enjoy our weekend with local tournaments and our wallets hurting from trading for a Baron de Fleur. Speed Recovery is the best spell card that isn't currently searchable by Quark Shooter. A non-once per turn monster reborn, and if we banish it from our grave, it is also a recovery back to the hand, as it is stated in its name. If you don't run at least 2 of this card, then I don't know what to tell you. Play 3 of it. It's a free extender, it makes the grind game great. And yeah, from personal experience in the tournament that I played, it helped me build some pretty crazy boards. Now, onto the best spell that is searchable of Quark Shooter. More about him in just a second. Speedroid Wheel gets you Duke and Grave if you draw him. And with Jesus taking the wheel, as the joke goes, and you are lucky enough to roll a 6, you can get 2 of your bricks out of the deck, combo pieces onto the field, or annoyances, looking at you Marble Machine, out of your deck and onto the field. It negates the effects of the monsters it specials out, so don't special Terror Top and then immediately go search for something else. Just bring him out if you want to thin the deck or you have a recovery in hand. Else, just save him for an RBS play. I will elaborate on that card in a second too, all in due time. All in all, it's a great unbreak Ash bait because we discard for cost, and who never liked having Den Den Daikaduke in grave? Now onto the more targeted version of the wheel. Speedroid Scratch. Make no mistake, it's an actually good card and a decent replacement for Win the Wind Channel and Small World, but run only 1 copy of it if you have Win, because Win is the general better version of Scratch. The positive of this card is it's a spell, so if the enemy has a monster gate on field, you can play around it with that. And the downside is, it's a spell, and you have to specifically discard a Speedroid card to activate this effect. So it's only good if you didn't draw every other hand trap in your deck, or yeah, you drew Duke. Up next is Duplicate, and yes, this isn't a spell, it's a trap. The reason I left out some spells in the Architype is because they don't see that much play. I will take a look at these when I'm done with the actual good cards that see play, no offense to anybody who plays the other ones, and then look at the outliers and the potential uses, if Konami ever decides to route them into playable cards. Duplicate is a bounce at the cost of a Wind Banish, so play 2, you don't want to open it necessarily. In grave, it can level Eater itself back on the field as a level 1 tuner, so it's usually your Foolish Burial target off of Hound. This makes it also quite valuable in the long term. If you want to recover it with Auroradon, you also have a free compulsory evacuation device. Well, not free, you have to banish a win for it. All in all, it's a cool card, but it's a bit annoying to see in your hands. Now, let's take a look at the extra deck monsters. We start off with the best Link monster in the Synchro deck. Rubber Band Shooter, RBS, the Rubber Band Man. Name it as you want to, but he is as handy as it gets. His first effect allows you to banish a Synchro monster to reveal 2 speedroids from your deck, whose level together equal the banished monsters. Randomly add 1 to your hand, usually by throw of a dice, and send the other card to the graveyard. This allows you to set up your graveyard for future plays. And the sneaky Terratop play. We'll look at these in the play video, which is after this one. So, yeah. Cheeky throw in to leave it little subs and ring the bell, so you don't have to remind yourself to keep in touch or trust the YouTube algorithm. Yeah, we all know how that one goes. Alright, now, we run 2 of this card. He's worth more than Baron at some points in the game, especially early game, because to get to Baron we need cards, and Rubber Band Shooter allows us to generate some card advantage if it goes through. If not, yeah, tough luck, because he's a pretty big choke point in the deck, especially if we bricked. Next up, Quark Shooter. Quark Shooter is the best card, aside from Baron and Terratop, to be ever printed for this archetype. Almost no contest, because Rubber Band Shooter also exists. It can reborn the materials that is used for its Synchro summon, or search a speedroid spell or trap. It's a really easy bridge to Crystal Wing if you open up Terratop and your opponent doesn't know that red-eyed dice isn't once per turn. Following Quark, we have Chanbara. Chanbara is a giant sword that's being piloted by a very small robot. Which is hilarious, yes, but it can also attack twice per battle and gains 200 attack when battling. This includes direct attacks, and when sent to the grave, doesn't have to be by card effect or battle, it recycles banished monster back to your grave. So it's either a free Dend and Daikatuk, or if you banish something of duplicate, you can also just shuffle that back. And yeah, it closes out games with pretty much no problem, because Card Turbo exists, and a cumulative attack or cumulative direct damage, if it goes through, of 6,200 is nothing to scoff at. So now to the actual good level 5 in the deck. Haqueta. He is what some people call the bread and butter of the deck. It's a free reborn if you control a speedroid tuner once per turn, and it's the virtual world player's worst nightmare. Play a single copy of this, at 2 it sadly just takes up space for another Quark Shooter. Haqueta's tribute effect, which many virtual world players hate or haven't heard of, is to increase the level of everything on field by 1, which makes it pretty hard for virtual world players to play around it, and yeah, pretty much leaves them with just their materials on field. But again, it's also pretty useful if you tribute it off to increase the levels of all the Auroradon tokens by 1, and you have already another tuner on the field. Which makes this card so, well, what's the word for it? Useful! Okay, moving on. Monster Negate, Giant Beatstick, great artwork, and an easy 2-of in any speedroid deck. Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. Make 2 of these, a Baron, set a Solemn Judgment, and watch your opponents struggle. And yes, before you ask, I did that at a tournament to an Eldritch player, and he pretty much lost the will to fight. Though I lost the best of 3, yeah. That's a story for another day. Crystal Wing was for a while the poster child of the deck, because Crystal Wing Pass was pretty much all the deck was doing. Now, aside from Crystal Wing, there's another dragon in here that also has some pretty busted effects. But we'll get to him after we tell you about Crystal Wing's effects. How, you thought there was an ad here, right? No, there isn't. So, Crystal Wing gains the current attack of a monster it battles, but only if that monster is level 5 or higher. And if it negates a monster and destroys it, it gains the attack of that monster. The base attack, not the current one. It's a bit confusing to get to know what Crystal Wing does, but essentially it's a free swing over any Nibiru token. You can think of it like that. So, moving on to the aforementioned other dragon, High Speedroid Kite Rake. In Archetype Best Boy, adorable level 8 dragon with a field wipe. It negates every open card on your opponent's side of the field if Synchro summoned out, or just destroy everything on the field. If it itself gets destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can add any Speedroid card from your deck to your hand. so it also floats technically. Or I think this is what they call a recruiter. So play a copy of it for recovery plays and to threaten field wipes, to force out negates, because if negated and destroyed, as aforementioned, he searches any speedroid monster directly from your deck. And if you haven't by this point specialed out Terratop and there's an open field, you can just grab Terratop, special it out, and continue on from there. Right, now level 8s are down. We go to Baron de Fleur, which is, for obvious reasons, not a budget option. I mean, look at Card Market and TCG Player. Just look up Baron de Fleur and think of how much it's gonna hurt your wallet, and then buy it, because it's a really, really good card. Also, coincidentally, a win monster. I have it in here because it's one of the best boss monsters ever printed, that we speedroid players can abuse the hell out of. It is an Omni-Negate, can reborn Crystal Wing if it's in the grave and we make it after the fact. Pops any card on the field, and yeah, is generally really annoying to get rid of. It is also the bane of every Nibiru in a 100-kilometer radius. Now, following up with Budget Baron, Crystal Clearing Synchro Dragon. It is also an Omni-Negate, and is unaffected by your opponent's monster effects. It does require you to use a Clearing monster to special summon it out, and does search a win monster after being sent to the graveyard, so technically a search for win or draw. But it has to be by an opponent's card effect. It's not bad, but it requires a bit too much investment for myself to be playing it. There are people who really like him though. Now, speaking of clearings, Clearing Fast Dragon, the Pendulum Synchro monster. Yeah, I also don't know why Konami decided to print these, but it's a decent card. It can negate an extra deck monster's effect and reduce their attack points to 0. Instead of being destroyed, it will take a backseat in your Pendulum zone, and if you have a tuner and non-tuner on the field whose total level equals 7, it can get itself back out by pseudo-synchro summoning it out. Think of it as it's making a pit stop. It's a decent card against extra deck heavy decks, but it's not as good as Baron because it is, yeah, only targeting extra deck monsters, and by that point they will usually already have a negate on board. It's a decent budget option though, so if you don't have Baron and you want to have something else that's pretty much in the same line, but just for monsters from the extra deck, which is still a pretty good interrupt, I would say it's a pretty okay replacement alongside Crystal Clearing Synchro Dragon. Now, up to Clear Wing Rider. You ever wanted to summon a motorcycle and ride off into the distance? Well, you can do one of these things. An actual Clearing Rider would be way too expensive. I haven't checked. So if you actually own a bike that looks like Clearing Rider, I would love to see that. So now, this card can help you wipe the field and recycle your grave, but you need to do so at the roll of a dice. It gains 500 attack times the card destroyed by this effect, which is shuffling back cards from your graveyard up to the number you rolled and then destroying cards on the field up to the number you shuffled back. Now, since we burned through our extra deck at a speed worthy of this archetype's name, having a recycle card is really useful. You can also attribute it to special summon out any 2 level 7 wind synchro monsters with different names from your extra deck. Again, a decent Baron replacement or add over something else depending on your playstyle or budget. And yeah, that's it. These are all the important speedroid cards. Next up is deck building, ratios, and non-speedroid cards we play. It will be a week or so until I drop that because, yeah, January is over and everybody went back into the swing of things. We don't have COVID anymore to worry about that much, so I'm not home as much as I would like to make these videos. So yeah, leave us up, get reminded when the next part drops, and let me know down below if this helped you or if I missed anything. And until then, see ya.